Hey, Sean G here from Chasing the Truth. You're about to get some of the best of samples of shows I've done over the last 5 years. God bless y'all and enjoy.
My belief is that yes, there are certain people who know high up in the religious, the high oligarchs in the religious realms, and they don't have a problem with it. They clearly don't have a problem with it because if they did, they'd be jumping up and down and screaming and hollering and saying, "Hey, you can't do this. This shouldn't be done. Stop right now." And we know that all the technology that we deal with today is stuff that they had 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So you can only imagine the type of technology that exists right now that we're not aware of. That's the most frightening thing to me. What exists now that people are using that we're not aware of? I know for a fact as an entrepreneur, I've spoken to people who have access to the designer drugs that make them extremely focused and heightens their intelligence. I know that for a fact because I learned about that after Katrina at one of those nights where we were sitting around smoking and drinking from some guys from New York that was on Wall Street. And they was like, yeah, man, these pills are expensive, but man, talk about being focused. And I was like, well, how much is it per pill? And it's like $500 a pill. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, but one of these will last you 30 days, man. I'm telling you, make more money than you could ever imagine. I was like, well, I'll buy one. But then all of a sudden, they didn't want to sell one. I'm like, oh, okay.
Damn.
And I'm like, all right, well, cool. And so things are rolled out to the public via movies and videos and things of that nature.
Yeah, I was about ready to
That,
say that sounds like a movie.
yeah. And they did turn into a movie. That's how that movie Limitless came out.
Mm-hmm.
But things are rolled out to you. You just don't see them. And again, for those of us who understand what's going on, it makes sense. But for someone who's like, oh, the Dark Waters is talking crazy. There's no drug that'll allow you to be super smart. Well, the drugs right now that boost your memory. There's ADD medicine, which people are taking in college who don't have ADD in order to help them focus and get their grades. So can you only imagine what people who have billions of dollars have access to is the point I'm making. So yeah, I'm getting off the point, but the overall point I'm making is there is so much that we're not aware of that it makes it easy for me to believe, although I don't have the evidence to support it, and I can't give you the evidence, although there are people who probably do, that yeah, they know what's going on and they don't have a problem with it. Now, the guys who shared the stories with me, I'll tell you something very interesting that I've never really shared. I kind of talked about it a little bit on Facebook. Two of them had a very, very mysterious house fire, where one of them died in the fire, and this was like last month. And then everybody went radio silent. And this is coming off of the last thing that they did. We're Inhumans is took place a couple of years ago, and the stuff that we've been discussing is stuff that's going on now. Overall, I have so much content from these guys just from the conversations that I probably have another 6, 7 stories. But the stuff they're dealing with now, all of a sudden they're having some significant problems because they're running against governmental sponsored entities that don't want them doing what they're doing. Um, and that's the problem that they're running into now. So I don't know how much longer they're going to even be trying to do this, but the information that they share with me thus far is so powerful. It's just that I have a responsibility to myself and my family to put it out as entertainment, and that's the best I can do. Because, and I think I've told you this, Sean, when I started talking about Dogman originally, and I
Mm-hmm.
really started hitting on Dogman, like I really was hitting the spots. Like there's Dogman stories and encounters and Dogman this and Dogman that, and it's this like tidal wave of Dogman content, right?
All
But
right.
when you start hitting the nail on the head with how where stuff is happening, where consistently activity is going on, how the code words that's used by people on military bases, by law enforcement and sheriff's departments to describe the creatures where they could talk about it over the radio without other people knowing what they're talking about. When you start hitting on it like I was hitting, because I had very, very good sources, then things start to happen. And like right after I did Coast to Coast, I don't know how many people I shared this with, but as I did my Coast to Coast interview, I got a visit. Somebody sitting outside of my house for days and days, and they waited for me to come outside. And Sean, when I tell you, I walked up on this man with a 45, walked up on the door, snuck up on him, tapped on the window with the gun. He rolled down the window, man, and I know he didn't see me. There was no way this dude saw me because the angle I took made it impossible for him to see me. Like you couldn't. And I trust me, I know. I've been in the street, so I know how to sneak up on somebody. And homeboy wasn't afraid. He wasn't worried. He called me by my name, big smile on his face, dead eyeballs. And anybody who's ever dealt with someone who's done dirt, like real dirt, like their eyes are different than the average person walking down the street has light in their eyes. There's love in their eyes. There's sympathy, empathy. There's emotion in their eyes. People who kill for a living don't have anything there. It's like looking into the eyes of a dead person. And that's what I was looking at. And I could tell I was dealing with somebody who really, really was on that level. But unlike what they show you in the movies, typically people like that tend to be pretty personable. And he was extremely personable. And he's like, man, I really love your content. I love what you do. Love your stories. But, you know, it would behoove you if, you know, some of that stuff you toned down a little bit. He gave some specific things. And I was like, well, why did you sit in your car, bro? You could have came and knocked on the door. Well, I didn't want to knock on your door. I didn't want to, you know, startle you or make you afraid or anything like that. You know, I didn't want to do anything to cause any conflict or be a threat. Exact words, to be a threat. But I just wanted to have a conversation with you. And I was like, wow.
So he spent days outside your door for you to sneak up on him.
Days outside, not my front door, outside my house, on the side of my house, parked on the opposite street. He would move. One minute he'd be there, the next minute he'd be up the block, next minute he'd be over there. But he just spent days until I confronted him, not for me to sneak up on him, but for me to confront him. He waited for me to come to him, not for him to come to me. And when I came to him, that's when we had that conversation.
So this wasn't like a man in black, was it?
No. This wasn't a man. This was a regular dude. It wasn't no men in black with no suits and looking like aliens. Not a regular dude, but it was a regular person. It wasn't, you know, how people like, oh, the men in black came to my house and they threatened me. Nah, that wasn't. This guy probably was some kind of military contractor. Now, probably is not even a word to say. I'm pretty sure he was. And I've had conversations with him since. I've been warned by other people who are contractors to be careful holding those conversations with him. It's like, because, you know, these guys are trained killers. And I was like, look, bro, I'm not here to be a hero. My intention is not to be out here. I'm not trying to expose the whole world of dog, man. I'm not trying to get evidence. I'm an entrepreneur who shares stories with people about the content and the topics. So I've had phone calls where he's called on the Dark Waters line and actually called on my regular phone number, which he should have never got, but however he got it, called him a regular phone number, be like, hey, man, I heard you on such and such show. That was great. I've had calls with him in a car with a friend. And he'd be like, man, we listening to you. Let me ask you a question about these black-eyed kids. And he's like, nah, bro, it's cool. So that's one of my God-given gifts, though, and I can honestly say that I pretty much get along with everybody. If somebody doesn't get along with me, man, then we got a problem. Something wrong with that person, because I pretty much get along with everybody. Right. So do I feel like they're a threat at this point in time? No, because I made my stance clear on where I stand on things. Like, you don't find me out investigating in the woods and going looking for dog man with cameras, because I just don't have that interest to do it. You don't find me going looking for Bigfoot in the woods. I make it clear that my stuff is entertainment, although it's filled with truth, it's still entertainment. Now, there are other people who don't listen, and I'm pretty sure they've had their issues. And you'll be amazed at how many people that are on YouTube who share content and stories, you know, it's like they're rolling along pretty well. And then all of a sudden it looks like their life goes to shit. You'll be amazed at the reasons why that's happening, and what's going on behind the scenes, because people don't really talk about what happens behind the scenes. But there are a number of people who've had channels that were successful, channel get taken down because they bumped heads with the wrong group of people, and they don't understand it's a game. They don't understand how the game is played. Now, it's one advantage I do have from working in politics is I understand the game. I understand the game of politics and how to bend when you need to bend. You know, there's certain things you need to stand firm on. Now, if somebody knocked on my door and said, "Well, you're out talking about being a Christian and you can't say, don't say nothing about Jesus Christ." I'm like, bro, kiss my ass. You know what I'm saying? We got a problem with that one. You know what I'm saying? But Dog Man, okay, who gives a damn about Dog Man? Because at the end of the day, it's a great topic, phenomenal information. And I've said this 1,000 times. Only a small segment of the United States, the population, even knows the topic exists. And when you talk about Bigfoot, there's a larger population. But when we talk about these topics, it's so easy to be discredited in any way, shape, or form. I've seen people try and discredit me on YouTube. They're amateurs at it, and they'll run their little discreditation campaigns. But it's very easy to discredit a person in the paranormal world, especially a person who's professing that they're a truth warrior and someone who's I'm going to share the truth. There, it's very easy to discredit a person. So there's a balance that I keep, and there's a reason why I leave things in the entertainment realm, because I just don't want that kind of fight dealing with everything else I have to deal with in my life. Like, I got a lot of crap I need to do. I don't need to be fighting off a discreditation campaign when someone's trying to really discredit me. And when someone really goes to discredit you, it's not YouTube. It's you end up in a newspaper. You know, it'd be like, Dark Waters, YouTube sensation, arrested for drinking and driving. That kind of crap, even though you weren't drinking and driving. That's the level of that people will go to discredit you when you get too far and go too deep. And I'm just not interested in that. And some people may say, well, I've had people say, well, don't you think that's a coward's perspective? And I'll say, well, to each his own. If you want to lose your credibility or fight for your credibility over an industry that's extremely under-monetized, which is why you see all the infighting in this industry, i.e., give you a perfect example, what happened when Art Bell died, and both of these people are my friends and they're phenomenal people, where you have Heather Wade, who was the torchbearer for Art. You had Keith Rowland, who's the distributor for Art, hiring Dave Schrader, and then you see this clash going on. People think it's a clash of personalities. It really was a clash about monetization at the end of the day. You got Heather on one side, who is, beloved by Art, close to Art. You got Art's business partner, who pretty much managed and ran the business, dealt with the numbers. Somebody's going to go. You know what I'm saying? Art passed. Something's going to happen. Something bad's going to happen. Too much money coming in the door. You know what I'm saying? And people can, in the industry and the fans, oh, well, this person's this person's that, this person did this person said that. Follow the money. That's what it all boils down to. It's all about the money. It's just like people were calling me talking crap about Dave, and Dave is my dude. It's like Dave Schrader did this. No, Dave got hired to do a job. He took the job.
Yeah.
You gonna beef the man out for getting paid? You know what I'm saying? So, and then people call me Heather's just no. Heather's trying to maintain what she was building. So, but the overall problem with the industry is the monetization. 90% of the people that I've dealt with don't make a dime. You know what I'm saying? In this industry, they're entertaining people for free, which circles back to the point I was making about, being discredited for something that, from a monetary standpoint, it can damage other things that I'm doing. I'll fight a discreditation battle for $100 million. We fighting over $100 million. Yeah, you can go at my throat to discredit me. That's worth the fight. But for the chump change that exist in this industry at this point in time, it's really not worth it. And that's one of the things I'm trying to change. You and I have talked about that, but it's hard to get people to see things a different way,
Oh yeah. One of the things you and I have talked about is, I've been in management myself, and I've changed a lot of stuff with with what I've managed. So I get where you're coming from. I see the politics of certain things. Man, I don't see a whole lot from your perspective from where you came from. So, yeah, I agree with you. So, what is the biggest threat to the industry right now? Obviously, you outlined that it's more or less you do the entertainment for free. What's the biggest, threat or challenge as of right now to the paranormal industry?
The mentality of everything is free. So, for example, um, YouTube allows people to put out content, and they're paid from ad revenues, right?
Hmm.
But what you discover once you're on YouTube is people use ad blockers because they don't want to watch the ads. So they want the content for 100% completely free. Well, what that does is it leaves entertainers with a small portion of advertisers that they can kind of go after that actually support this niche and say, okay, well, I'm willing to put money into the paranormal niche and see what I'll get out of it, right?
All right.
It's not like we're talking about cars or auto parts or even selling palm trees or beach vacations. We're really, really talking about a small niche market, which is the paranormal. So if you're 30,000 feet in the air looking down and you're looking at all these different markets that people participate in, and we look at the paranormal entertainment market, there's a certain number of advertisers that are willing to advertise. There's a certain number of radio stations that's willing to support. You got YouTube on the other side where people are actually getting paid pennies on the dollar for their content creation. Um, and so what you see is an overall desert when it comes to monetization. And you look at the various paranormal radio channels, whether it's a L&M or it's a Fringe Radio or with the exception of Dark Matter Digital Network, and somebody like a George Norrie or Dave Schrader when he was with the radio station he was on where he was being compensated by the radio station, the compensation is not really there. And that's what breeds the infighting and arguing in the industry. So the lack of monetization is really, really what feeds all the fighting. It's like somebody threw a piece of steak out there and it's 100 people trying to get that cooked piece of steak, but nobody's been eating for 6 years. So everybody's fighting, stabbing each other, poking eyes, ripping off ears so they can get a piece of that steak. And what it boils down to is because people in the industry feel like their content is not good enough to be monetized and they refuse to ask people to pay for the content, whether it's a minuscule amount, a 99 cents, $1.99. So overall, people are programmed, well, I'm going to get this podcast for free and I'm going to go with this free podcast. But if across the board, people said, okay, man, people got to start paying for this shit. You know, I don't give a damn if minimum $1.99 across the board, then you would see a renaissance in this industry where it'd be way better content. More people will come into the industry, more really qualified people will come into the industry with radio background experience and things of that nature. So the biggest problem is the lack of monetization, which leads to the infighting and backbiting and all the rest of the crap that goes on. And then it just spirals out of control to the point to where nothing actually grows. Think about it. I mean, as somebody in this industry, the most you can do is you can do a documentary, you can write a book, you can have a radio show, and you can possibly have a website. I mean, just the most you can do, the average person would do, right?
All right.
Nobody's talked about video games, which is what we're developing. Nobody's really talked about comic books, which is what we're developing. But for the most part, when you look at what everybody's doing, they either have some form of documentary that they're working on, some book, or podcast, possibly a YouTube channel. I mean, those are the 4 streams of monetization. But there are many other streams and many other ways to monetize the industry. But because of the mentality for years and years and years, again, that one piece of steak that's dropped down on the ground, everybody's fighting for it. If you're standing over, everybody's fighting in the crowd and you're standing over saying, hey, why y'all fighting over that piece of steak when we can just go take over the kitchen and open the refrigerator and get what we want to get? Everybody used to fighting over the steak. So, what I've done is I said, hey, y'all go fight for the steak. I'll just do it my way and keep it moving,
Okay. Well, here's a question for you. So a lot of people probably don't know who I am, as of right now. A lot of people that follow me on social media know who I am. But why did you pick this one guy, Sean Graham, to do a radio show for you? Obviously, I've never had any radio show experience. So why did you come and pick me?
Well, a couple of months, maybe last year, I was doing live streams where I was taking phone calls. And like if I was to send you a snapshot of my whiteboard in my house, everything, every move I make is planned. And I said, when I start taking phone calls, I'm looking for people for next year that can host the show. And so I was taking live phone calls. I'm listening to everybody's tonality. I'm listening to what's going on. And it was only you and one other person that had the ability to captivate me as a storyteller. And you captivated me by telling your stories. So I'm talking to people. I think that night I took like 15 phone calls through Skype on YouTube. And I'm just listening. Boom, 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 boom. Wait, who's this dude? Hold on. Okay, this guy's got something. And I'm like, all right, cool. I write your name on the board and I put a date to circle back. And as all things go well, I'm going to circle back to you. So then I started looking at your what you were doing on Twitter. And I'm like, okay, this guy's really into the paranormal. You know, he's promoting himself already via Twitter with, you know, articles and things of this nature. So this is a person that's self-motivated that really wants to do something. Then I said, okay, it's time to do Dark Waters Radio. Let's give the guy opportunity. Then we started talking, and we have similar beliefs and similar understandings of paranormal world. And I was like, okay, this is going to work out perfectly. And then from there, I said, man, I put my full backing behind you. But it was what you were already doing. Like life prepares us for opportunities. It's just that most people don't seize the opportunity when it comes. And you were smart enough to say, well, shit, okay, I'll do it. Yeah. You know,
why not?
Yeah, why not? You know,
from my perspective is, you know, which I've only shared it with a few people what happened with me prior to, you know, all this, which obviously right now sounds like a pretty good thing to start this conversation. Is 3 years ago I was in a car accident. I caused myself. I was drinking and driving. You know, I fully admit to that. But in the process, I got a infection in my left leg after the accident, and it turned out to be necrotizing fasciitis. So after 7 days, I barely remember, you know, going from my house, which my sister come pick me up and took me to the hospital. My life was a wreck at that time. Alcoholic, this, that, and the other. I kept it all to myself. But at the time when the doctor come in, the surgeon I've known for years says, Sean, I'm going to have to take your leg, and you've got about a 30 to 40% chance of surviving the surgery. So I should have freaked out, but I didn't. So anyway, I had a near-death experience after he gave me all these shitload of drugs. Said my piece to everybody that was within earshot that I cared about. After that, said a prayer, closed my eyes, and then I met God. After I woke up, probably about I was on the ventilator for like 10 days, and I don't remember. The first thing I remember is waking up in a different hospital, and it was about 3 weeks later. That process, since then, my life has changed. Every step that I have taken, whether it was me planning it or not planning it, God has set stuff in front of me. Sometimes I didn't pay attention. Sometimes, he kept coming back at me. And then I got to the point each day that something happens, like, okay, where do you want to take me now, God? And then you come and present this opportunity to me, and I was like, well, is this something I need to do? And all of a sudden, snap, yeah, go for it. I was like, all right, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll go ahead and do it. Which, the weird thing is, I've never done audio or anything of that nature. No audio, this, that, or the other. But from my perspective is, I used to be over an EEG lab and sleep labs and stuff like that. All of the stuff that I did with that particular, messing with those electronics and computers and whatnot, messing with audio now is like, oh yeah, now I can connect amplifiers. I know the background amplifiers because amplifiers are used in EEGs. So, everything up to this point has been something that has God's dropped in my lap. And as soon as you come to me, and I already knew that you were a man of God, and I was like, well, hell, might as well go do it. I'm here because of the grace of God anyway, because, I said, hey, I want to go back. Which, I don't know if I told you this or not. God wanted me to go on and not come back, and I argued with him constantly. And then he finally said, all right, this is going to hurt. And the next thing I woke up 30 miles away in another hospital. And since then, every day, God has shown me different things. And you are part of God's plan to me. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense. I mean, It makes a lot of sense, And I'll tell you, we're doing a tell-all. I'll share something with people that I allude to things, but I never really tell people. I tell some personal things, but I'll share something with you guys. So, I'll take you back to 1998. 1998, I am sitting out of college for a year. I had done an intern with the Department of Defense, Space and Strategic Defense Command. I'm from New Orleans. All my friends that I grew up with, pretty much none of them did a whole bunch. I had two sets of friends. I got like friends who went on to be doctors, lawyers, and engineers, and I had friends who just from my very old neighborhood who ain't do nothing, right? And I've always been a man who's been able to walk with one foot in each side, one corporate side, one street side. Well, during that year, I'm walking in the street side, significantly heavy, real hard. And we end up being in a situation where one of my friends gets shot and murdered. Mm-hmm. And the retaliation was organized, extremely well organized. And I'm sitting in the car with one of my guys that was my best friend at the point in time, and we're watching the retaliation of what happened, right? So everything goes down. This happens in Tallahassee, Florida. I return to New Orleans, and one of my closest uncles dies, and I end up going through this extremely hardcore spell of depression, like really hard. You got to remember, when I say the retaliation was organized, I'm a genius kind of guy. The retaliation was organized. I sat there and watched what was organized, and then my uncle dies, and then another friend of mine dies, and it's like you participated in something bad, extremely bad. You were the major participant, pretty much the boss of what went wrong, and the retaliation starts coming in my personal life. And so I end up going out to the middle of nowhere, and I'm suicidal, like completely suicidal. Because I'm like, man, you know what? Things are going good. I don't even know why, because I've never been that kind of person. Back in those days, I had a Ruger 9mm. And when I tell you I'm in the middle of nowhere, I'm in the middle of nowhere. And I sit down on this, and had I killed myself that day, like nobody would have found me, because I'm way out in the middle of nowhere. And they would have found my car, then eventually found me. But I'm sitting down, and I got the weapon next to me, and I just talked to the guy. I said, "God, well, if I'm supposed to be here for something important other than this foolishness, then I need you to let me know, because I can't live a life that's just street stuff and halfway decent and this and that, and nothing's going on, right? Like, just everything is still and quiet." Well, I stand up, pick up the gun, and as soon as the gun touches my hand, the wind starts blowing like there's a mini tornado, like literally. I mean, the grass and weeds around me are circling, and everything is just like going crazy. And so I put it back down. I'm like, well, that's an answer for you. And I was like, well, what do you want me to do? And the voice in my head says, pray for what you want, and I'll give it to you. And I said, I wanted knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, and I wanted 2 sons. And I said, God, I'll make a covenant with you that if you give me my 2 sons, I'll always take care of them. I'll teach them, and every day of my life, I'll learn things to teach them. Wind stops blowing. I start headed back to my car, and as I'm walking back to my vehicle, I see a red pickup truck coming towards me, like a beat-up red Ford Ranger. Like, remember the little small Ford Ranger that they had?
Oh yeah, I
And
had one.
keep in mind, when I say I'm in the middle of nowhere, there's nobody around. And these people coming to this area is really suspect. So now I'm pulling my weapon from behind my back because I'm like, what the hell is going on? And the way I'm parked, they block me in. Okay. I don't know what the hell's going on. I get closer and closer. Now they're just standing next to my vehicle. And so finally,
Hey, folks, thanks for listening to this best stuff sample of some of my 5 years in doing this radio show podcast called Chasing the Truth. Please visit iamdarkwaters.com, or you can email me at seang@iamdarkwaters.com. And my numbers and links are in the description below. God bless y'all, and I'll catch you on the flip side.